Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 912. I had the white pieces and start off with knight f3, going for a Reti opening. He played c5. This is called a Sicilian invitation because I could play e4 here. You can see that's the top move there because it transposes into a Sicilian defense. But I would have started with e4 if I wanted to play the Sicilian. So I could play c4 here, go along English lines, or play g3, keep it in Reti lines. Let's see, he went e6 here, a bit of a rare move, but not unheard of. We'll see, actually he has chances to transpose back into regular queen's pawn positions later. Let's see, I continue with c4. It seems to be a good move. I'm just trying to keep him from blocking this light square diagonal. I'm going to put the bishop here, and I want that bishop to be have as much scope as possible. So the pawn here, in addition to threatening to trade off the queen pawn when it comes forward, it's just helping to keep this diagonal open. He never did play d5. I was kind of expecting it all along. Let's see, he went knight f6, good move. I go bishop g2. He goes knight c6, so pretty normal. And I castled here. Could have played knight c3 there as well. He went bishop e7. I go knight c3 now, and he castles. And I go d4. So here's the point where actually if he had played d5, I mean, he could have played d5 at anywhere, well, pretty much anywhere along in the previous moves. But here's one of his last chances to play d5 and get into kind of a standard position. If I would take, which is kind of the normal response, look at all of a sudden we've transposed into a position in the database where there's lots of games. E takes d5 is normal, but knight takes d5 is possible. This is actually a semi-Tarrasch defense against the Queen's Gambit. So pretty mainline opening, and black should be fine there. But instead he played c takes d4. I take, and after this exchange, let's see, yeah, one more chance to play d5. After this exchange, we're basically out of the book here. But I'll just go ahead and show the next few moves here. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and a6, and then we're out of the book. And after that exchange, it seems to be a pretty good position for white. So this is really his last chance to play d5. That's what he should do in this position. Anyway, he took, I took, and he played a6. We're out of the opening book. Knight a4, not necessarily the best move here. The chess engine liked rook to d1, very logical move, and just keeping pressure on the d file, making it hard for him to advance the d pawn, maybe expose a weakness here on d6. I went knight a4. I was looking also at these dark squared weaknesses here. I thought it might be interesting, and it's okay. It's not like a bad move, but rook d1 maybe was stronger. And then I just plopped the knight down here on d6, and maybe if I have enough time, I'll gang up and get some pressure on the d pawn there. He went rook b8. I mean, I did gain a tempo there. And then I went bishop f4, which provoked this d6 move. Yeah, the chess engine didn't like that. It liked bishop e3. Just wants to place the bishop there. I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe d6 is in his plan anyway. So by provoking d6, it seems to be helping black a little bit. So that's probably what's wrong with this move. So bishop e3 is a nice alternative, keeping control of this diagonal here. Anyway, with that diagonal shut down, I went bishop g5, and this seems to be a mistake. Well, actually, it is a mistake. I think I understand this one, although it takes a little while, a little bit of calculating. But actually, I mentioned during the game in passing that e5 might be a problem here. And in fact, it is. e5 is going to lead to an advantage for black with best play, although it's still complicated. The problem is that I need to keep in touch with this knight, which is under attack. So I drop back here, and then he can attack my queen with his knight. And now I can counterattack his queen with my knight. So this will lead to some exchanges. And but with best play, it leads to some kind of advantage. So if he takes here, I have to take his queen. And then a very important moment here. I mean, there's lots of things that he could take. He might be tempted to grab the exchange here, but the best move is to grab the loose bishop here. And then I have to take his knight. He gets to take back with check. And this is a position where both sides have two rooks, a bishop, two rooks and two minor pieces. Black has the bishop pair and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he has an extra pawn too because he grabbed this pawn. And my pawn structure is generally somewhat messed up. So this is a position that is better for black, maybe winning. So I was lucky he didn't play that move. But I didn't mention there were ways to go wrong here. For example, if he played the move here, knight takes f1 to grab the exchange right away, I can grab his bishop. That's why this isn't any good. Let's see, he can escape with the knight. I can take the rook, takes back, and then I can play b3 to defend my pawn. And so this is better. Let's see, it's still, well, it's one rook and two minor pieces. He has one rook and two minor pieces, so the pieces are the same. The pawn count is the same, but this knight is a bit trapped behind enemy lines here. It has no move at the moment. Perhaps I can exploit that. And my pawn structure is a lot sounder, and I have the same number of pawns as my opponent. So this is actually better for white. So there were chances there for black to go wrong, even if he had found this e5 move. But he didn't play that at all. He went bishop to d8 here, so he let me off the hook. So I got my knight out of trouble with knight takes c8. And then we get into a position where I'm a little bit better. b3, maybe rook a c1 was a better way to defend. He went h6, kicking my bishop. I decided to keep it on the board, so I ended up placing it on this b3 square anyway that the computer had been recommending I go to a while back. Let's see, he plays knight d7. That's okay. I go rook a d1. He goes bishop e7. I go queen to g4, switching my attention to the king side here. So he went bishop f6. I criticized this during the game, but it doesn't seem to be a big problem, at least not in the computer's eyes. So his problem seems to be later. So I pushed on with f4. In fact, the computer doesn't like f4. It wants me to move my queen back to e4 and maybe threaten this pawn over here, although he can defend it. Maybe it's good to try and keep him on the defensive. Anyway, I pushed on with f4, and then he went knight c5, which lands him into trouble. b5 seems to be the best answer to this f4 push. You know, he's going to try and create weaknesses on the queen side while I try and do something on the king side, and seems to be pretty well balanced position. Anyway, after f4, he went knight to c5, and I'm good here. I can just push on with f5, kind of disrupt his structure over here. Let's see, he took, I took. Yeah, I took with the rook. This is, in fact, this is now getting close to winning. But I let him get away with something here. So anyway, let's see. He went queen d7, queen d7, pinning. Yeah, I was concerned about this pin, so I wasn't playing the best moves here. Let's show you. Let's see. I did take here, so I grabbed my pawn, so that's why I have an advantage. Well, one of the reasons why I have an advantage, but the other reason is I just have better pieces here. And after queen e6, I should chase his queen back with bishop to d5. This is kind of a clever idea coming up here. I was a little bit worried about my queen being chased away and then losing the bishop here suddenly, so I was kind of keen to get my bishop out of trouble. But, well, I kick his queen around first. Queen drops back to d7 to keep this kind of pin on. Then I go rook d to f1. And he can't exploit the pin. If he plays g6 now, my queen can just take it because I managed to get the bishop here with tempo. I placed the bishop on that d5 square, hitting his queen, and now it's pinning the f-pawn. So that stops him from pushing his g-pawn forward and exploiting the pin, so I don't have to deal with that right away. And, you know, I don't have to move my bishop until he moves his king or unpins in some other way. So anyway, this is a winning position for white, according to the engine. Whereas after rook f4, we're back in the range of about even. Maybe, you know, I have a winning advantage because of my extra pawn, but it's not a huge advantage. I guess it's still a winning advantage. I'll take that back. It wasn't until we get into that rook and pawn endgame that I let him get back to even. So I'm keeping some small edge through this part. And let's just go forward here, and we just get some trades. And so far, nothing has gone wrong. In fact, I was thinking this is a pretty good endgame for me, and it is. Probably should win with best play, but rook and pawn endgames can be tricky. And right here is where I make my mistake. So if you want to, well, I gave the answer in the notation there. I should have just saved the h-pawn. Basically, I traded the h-pawn for the e-pawn here, thinking I would get pressure on this guy, but I can just save the h-pawn and round this guy up at my leisure. I just wasn't quite realizing it. You know, I'd spotted this idea. I could check here with the pawns here. It drives his king back, and now I can play h4. And now there's just no way for him to defend this pawn. So this is just another pawn, and that is certainly winning. So that's why I was probably winning all the way up till this point. Instead, after he played rook h6 here, I just went rook takes e4. This just is a trade. And I'm still a pawn up for the moment, but it's not as simple. Let's see, I went rook f4 check. I went king e6. Brought my king over, king f3 to defend the pawn. And let's see, he dropped his rook back to h6. And I played e4, and that opens up the second rank. And that's where it really becomes a draw. But it's, as I said, it's getting kind of tricky to figure out how to win at this point. Here's one line, for example. Rook to g4, hitting the g-pawn. You could throw in this check. I could come forward. I could come here and harass my pawn. I drop back. He comes back to defend his pawn. And then I can push on with a4. So I guess just a question of trying to make progress slowly. It's often the rule in the endgame. You try to hurry it too much, you can land into trouble. You just need to move these things forward in a way that keeps everything protected and not give up any more material. Anyway, in this position, I played e4, and that lets him bring his rook down to the second rank. And now it's just a draw. I can't really do much to defend this pawn. If I push it forward, you know, he can bring his rook here to attack my b-pawn, and I have no way to get over and defend it because my king and my rook are kind of stepping on each other's toes there. So should be a draw here, but there was one last trick I had up my sleeve. So let's go forward. We do some maneuvering here, and he gets the pawn, so now it's all even. And this is the final trick, rook f5. And he can't take that rook. Basically, it's lost after he takes that rook. This is just a winning king and pawn endgame. You know, in the king and pawn endgame, it's not so much about, well, you know, if you have a pawn up in a king and pawn endgame, that's a good start. But a lot of times it's about things like outside passed pawns and position of the king. And I have both of those going for me in this case after he takes. So if he were to just drop his rook back somewhere along the a file, it's still a dead draw. Instead he took, and this is actually winning from this moment forward, and I don't do anything to blow it. Let's see, I play b6. Oh no, it's his turn. He went b6. That's a, I mean, well, he's lost anyway. So I come forward with my king, keeps his king tied down. He plays king d7. I go g4. I'm just gradually running him out of moves. He goes b5, b5 rather. So I went ahead and traded, played b4, and now he's got no moves. And he just was looking for something when he ran out of time. The chess engine gives this as the most stubborn defense, the king to e7. And, well, just to show what would happen, I'll come over here and take this pawn. He could go after these pawns. This is not best play. King e7. After king e7, the computer was just kind of shuffling the king back and forth here. But just to show the race, I get to take this pawn. He can grab both of these pawns. Come back here, he takes. I push forward. He's got to take this pawn too so that this B or G pawn can roll forward. So he takes here, and I push, and he pushes. And you can see I'm only 2 steps away, and he's 4 steps away, and it's my turn. So I even have time to take the d pawn and then queen. So it's an easy win for white, but I just wanted to show that technique for winning. You know, it's basically in this position here, after I played b4 and it's black's turn to move, it's basically a Zugzwang. You can't move any of the pawns, and whichever way he goes with the king, if he goes to this side with the king, it's even worse, because I'll come over here and grab this pawn, and this pawn is even closer to queening. So anyway, it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you later. Bye.